My name is Kaylee Hockenberry, and I'm doing my presentation on race, ethnicity, and the early U.S. drug policy. Prior to the 20th century, the perception of drug use and drug addiction in the United States was very different than in today's society. Drug use was not a criminal activity, nor was it regarded as a hereditary evil. Drug addiction was generally looked on as a bad habit or some type of personal misfortune. The drug opium and the Chinese. Opium, I didn't know what that was until I did this, but it's like a smoky. During the 1800s, opium was brought to the U.S. by the Chinese immigrants. Let's see. It was in the West Coast in the United States as cheap labor workers. They worked on mining and railroads and construction industries. That's why the Chinese came over, and then they brought opium with them. It was very common to see opium smoking establishments known as opium dens in most cities with any Chinese population. Besides opium, these dens were offered other inquiry activities as their pardons, such as gambling and prostitution. Another author had suggested that the Chinese labor would spend as much as 50% of their daily income in opium dens. By the 1890s, the average domestic consumption of crude opium was over 500,000 pounds each year, and that was of morphine and salts over 20,000 ounces annually. These figures represented the total consumption of opium and morphine in the United States, including medical reasons, including the medical industry and what was smoked and used from the Chinese. Opium was the first U.S. drug to receive negative public attention. They received negative public attention because they were scared for their youth, and the prostitution had young women and young girls that were going in there and being with these men. Eventually, opium smoking and opium dens would begin to attract individuals from society who were not Chinese. These individuals included gambling, prostitution, and underworld fatigue. In San Francisco, Chinatown, in 1885, there was 26 opium dens, of which catered for more than 24 smokers at a time. Opium smoking became to attract members of the non-Asian community. Attitude towards opium smoking also began to change. The negativity toward opium and its use had nothing to do with the drug's addictive qualities. According to Booth, 1996, public opinion toward opium was primarily based on racial hatred by mainstream society towards Chinese immigrants. To support or validate this negativity, newspapers and Time carried tales of crimes about the opium dens. A common concern for people was that many young women and young girls and young men from respectable families were being introduced to this vast opium dens where they would be ruined morally. So, that's opium in Chinese. Next, I'm going to talk about cocaine and African Americans. It was in the West, actually, take that back. It was in the South, and the African Americans were given cocaine by the white farmers and stuff because it helped them work faster and have more energy. Besides cocaine, let's see. The use of cocaine, much like the use of opium and morphine, became very popular. Besides cocaine's effects, it was well known for its ability to fend off fatigue and allow its users to be more energetic and productive. As a result, cocaine became popular among some African American laborers in the South. Some Southern laborers' bosses were even known to provide their black laborers with cocaine to increase their productivity. Cocaine provided by whites to blacks under the presence of the economic productivity was seen as forgivable. However, cocaine used by blacks for their own purposes was an indication of moral depravity. This double standard would ultimately serve to cinemize Southern blacks and cocaine use beyond the early existence of racial and social discriminations of Southern United States. Following the turn of the 19th century, increased reports of cocaine use among African Americans aroused all stereotypes and fears of American racism. As a result, cocaine and African Americans become negatively associated and increased cocaine-related offenses committed by African Americans. In this time, they were told that African Americans had superhuman strength, violent crimes, acts, and sexual offenses against their white counterparts. Cocaine became associated with the aggression of murder, rape, and African American males. So basically, what I'm saying is because blacks were using cocaine, they said that they had more strength and that they were committing crimes and rapes and being offensive to the others in the community. Last but not least, we're going to talk about marijuana and the Mexicans. In the 1900s, the relationship between marijuana and the Mexican immigrants led to the construction of Americans' first anti-marijuana laws. It would not be unusual during this time to see Mexican farm workers smoking marijuana after a long day of hard work, just like other people will have a go get a beer after work, just a drink to, let the work day go and settle down. Ultimately, the relationship between marijuana and Mexican immigrants during this time period would lead to the construction of America's first anti-marijuana laws. The influence of marijuana smuggling from Mexico through Cuba into the southern United States began to arouse much concern among the law enforcement and government officials. The increased popularity of the smoking of marijuana sparkled its media, government, anti-marijuana campaigns. In a remarkable similar now I lost my place. To that of opium and the Chinese and cocaine and African Americans and marijuana became negatively associated with Mexican immigrants. Public campaigns against the smoking of marijuana began to center on its use by Mexican laborers and the fears that would spread the drug to youth and other vulnerable populations. Stereotypical perceptions of disfavored Mexican laborers were created that included marijuana smoking and intoxication. One result of this dynamic has been that many disadvantages and minority groups in the U.S. have had to suffer differently for their drug use. The U.S. distinct record of creating substance abuse policy predicted on which individuals in society are using drugs rather than on the specific characteristics of the drugs or their effects on society, has perpetuated discriminatory social and political responses toward low-income and minority substance abusers.